I speak of Yemeni bodega owners and Mexican abuelas, Senegalese taxi drivers and Uzbek nurses, Trinidadian line cooks and Ethiopian aunties. Yes, aunties. To every New Yorker in Kensington and Midwood and Hunts Point, know this. This city is your city, and this democracy is yours too.
Kensington, Midwood, Hunts Point. Welcome back to Inside City Hall. During Zohran Mamdani's nearly 30-minute victory speech last night, he touched on a variety of themes, such as the changing of the guard of the Democratic establishment and the power of immigrants in those neighborhoods and many more. He was talking to and about working-class New Yorkers in what you just heard, describing some of the members of the broad coalition that built his campaign leading up to the election. That includes immigrants of diverse backgrounds, as well as New Yorkers from the Bronx to Brooklyn and everywhere in between. A closer look at voter data shows that Mamdani did attract a lot of voters from all different parts of the city. Joining me now to break it down and talk about what the numbers might mean is Romalewski. He is the director of the CUNY Mapping Service. Welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
As usual, you turned it around in amazing speed. What kind of database are you working from? You just took the data straight from the Board of Elections?
Well, it's very much a team effort. It's myself, John Mollenkoff, our center director, colleagues that developed the maps, and John's analysis of the voter data was key behind all of that to enable us to filter the districts based on different characteristics of ethnicity or voting patterns or income, education, things like that, to really give New Yorkers a much fuller picture of what the election might mean.
Okay, let's take a look at Manhattan for the first cut. I found this very interesting. When you look at Manhattan, and Mamdani, if we can zoom in a little bit more, Mamdani won all of Manhattan as a whole, but if you look at green is Cuomo, blue is Mamdani, darker means a sort of more intense support, lighter means they kind of split that particular area. And what I see there is on the east side, especially the upper east side, it looks like that is Cuomo country. He had a fair amount of support on the west side as well, but it looks like it was pretty much just blown out by Greenwich Village on the southern side and certainly Harlem and Washington Heights to the north. Is that pretty much what happened here?
And there was big turnout in Manhattan, especially lower Manhattan, along with big areas of Brooklyn, and that really put Mamdani over the top.
Right, right. In fact, if we nudge over and we look in Brooklyn, in central Brooklyn in particular, really deep blue, across a very, very broad swath of Brooklyn. It's very hard to overcome that kind of support when it's all, kind of bundled up that way. And it's hard to imagine what in that, I guess, the brownstone belt, you would call it. I'm looking at Bushwick, looking at Bed-Stuy and into Crown Heights and over into Park Slope.
And up through Greenpoint.
Yeah.
So not only was the share of vote support that he got in those areas really strong, but the turnout was off the charts, especially in that area. That's not the only place in the city. Midwood and Borough Park and Manhattan, as we mentioned, but that part of the city, the turnout was like 2 or 3 times what it was in 2021. The share of support that he got in that area this year was about the same as what Adams got in 2021, but the number of voters was really tremendous.
I noticed that the raw numbers, you're talking about 2 and 3 times what the turnout was in some of those same areas, and I guess that told the story. Now, if we could go and look at Queens, there's a pattern here. If we can put in the transit lines, this is a very interesting sort of a notion here. And look, if you look at where you see all of that green there in the middle of Queens, and that's Middle Village and Forest Hills and so forth, and there's a little bit of transit there, but not much. It's what we call a transit desert. Not a lot of mass transit there. They're driving cars out there, and it looks like car drivers versus subway riders was one of the breakdowns of how the vote turned out yesterday.
And you can filter that on the map. You can only show the election districts where there's a majority of renter households or a majority of owner households. And you can really see the difference, that the renters really correlate well with the subway routes, and those transit deserts are mainly homeowners, so not only car drivers, but also homeowners. And if you also filter by, let's say, how Trump did in 2024, there's a lot of overlap as well. And Cuomo did well in those areas. he was the de facto GOP candidate in a way, because that's how the pattern usually is, where GOP candidates do well in those areas. That's where he did some of his best.
Well, yeah, that's very striking, because this map also includes Curtis Sliwa's vote. It's just he didn't win any election districts. Election district is, more or less about 1,000 votes, 1,000 voters, registered voters. And it would be, orange or red or whatever color you picked. Yeah. And I think there were maybe a few in Staten Island, but I'm looking at this map and I'm not seeing any Curtis Sliwa election districts whatsoever.
No, and it's interesting, like if you look at Borough Park in Brooklyn, Sliwa did extremely well there in 2021, but almost nothing in this year. Cuomo did really well in those areas.
Right. They're in southern Brooklyn, right? From, sweeping all the way down into Bay Ridge. And that's Cuomo country. He's doing quite well, although not nearly enough to offset all of what was happening up there in Bed-Stuy and Williamsburg. Right?
That's right.
Very interesting. And here again, you say the subway lines also correlate with renters versus homeowners. We know that the DSA and the Mamdani campaign specifically targeted renters because of the importance of his campaign plank around freezing the rent. So they were going right at those voters, and I guess this proves that the strategy worked.
And you can see a lot of overlap too if you look at renters plus other characteristics, income, education level, ethnicity, things like that. So you can see really interesting patterns and understand in a way how the campaign pulled it out.
I didn't even want to try and do the sort of the ethnic mapping, because there are so many of the South Asian communities that the Mamdani campaign was relying on. They're all over the place. There's some in the Bronx, there's some in Queens, there's some in Manhattan even, and it becomes very hard to sort of piece it together. That was just one part of the coalition. But when it comes to income, is there a clear income split where above a certain level you're more likely to be pro-Cuomo, or was it just kind of across the board?
I don't remember what how that panned out, but you can see that very easily on the map, and it'll show you not only how they did this year, but also how that compares to 2021.
Right. Well, I mean, even looking at the Manhattan map, I think we all know where, when you're looking at Kips Bay, or you're looking at, you're looking at some of these ritzy areas, that correlates with income. Let's take a look at Staten Island and get a sense of what went on there. Very much Cuomo country, and in fact, he outdid Curtis Sliwa, who handily won Staten Island just 4 years ago.
That's right. And when you look back at how Cuomo has done when he ran for governor, he's done well on Staten Island. Like, he's one of the few Democrats that have won Staten Island, where most office holders or a lot of them tend to be Republican.
Right.
So he's done well there in the past. And it's interesting because if you look at that area as well as, let's say, Southeast Queens and Southeast Brooklyn. So Southeast Queens and Southeast Brooklyn are really where solid Democratic strongholds are in mayor and governor and presidential elections.
Sure.
Just kind of the opposite of Staten Island. And Mamdani did okay in those areas. It's really Eric Adams' country. That's where Eric Adams' base of support was in 2021. So he, as the Democratic candidate, could have done much, much better. That's what you would expect.
Sure.
But Cuomo really ate into that support. I'm sure voters in those areas probably were thinking, well, should I vote for the Democrat, who maybe I have questions about because he's a Democratic socialist, or should I vote for someone who I voted for in the past, even though he's not technically the Democratic candidate? And so you can see that and how that played out in the vote result.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, Steve Romalewski. These maps will be posted online, and I urge people to look at them, play with them, put in the variables. I didn't even have time to get into where you put in public housing, and you can see that there was kind of a strategy there as well.